I want to show you a little trick here. We've got this possum that we're going to egg tan. And we have flushed it, we put it on the rack, and we've dried it. And now we've rehydrated it to see if we need to degrease it. And it looks like it's still got some grease on it, so we need to degrease it. But we also have some areas that are pretty thick in here that we don't get everything off of necessarily with the flushing knife. And especially for faces and things like that, what I find works really good is just a wire brush like this. Don't go too heavy or deep with it. Just go along those hardened edges, and it will take a lot of that excess meat off of there and make it a lot softer and easier to tan when the time comes. Okay, the next step we're gonna do with this possum is we're gonna degrease him. There's a few of those furs that you're definitely gonna have to degrease. Fox, beaver, raccoon, possum, bear. And I've just got some water heated up here. It's not scalding hot. It's just good and warm. And I'm going to mix into that about a tablespoon per gallon of Dawn. This is the best degreasing stuff you can find. We'll get our gloves here real quick. And we'll get this mixed up. I'm just agitating with my hands. Now you get an extra greasy hide. You just want to make it till you got suds in there, okay? If you got an extra greasy hide, you can actually paint some of that Dawn dish soap right onto the hide and roll it up side in, and then go back to this process after the fact. This one's not extremely greasy. So I'm just getting inside here now, and I'm just rubbing that liquid into it to get the grease off of it. Just like how it's washing dishes, basically. We're just trying to break up any grease that's on this hide. Once we do that, we'll rinse it with fresh water. And then we'll put it back on the rack again until it's tacky. And then we're gonna put our tanning solution on it. I find that this is a more important step when you're doing something like a brain tan or an egg tan than with some of the chemical tans. And that's another thing that I like about the chemical tans is you can do it less perfect and still get away with it, because those chemicals will penetrate that stuff no matter what. Even if there's a little bit of grease left on them, if there's a little bit of fat here and there, it will definitely take care of it. Whereas you don't get that luxury sometimes with the brain tanning stuff. Now, this is also cleaning the fur really well, making it nice and soft, helping get any matting out of the fur. That's all happening right now at the same time. Make sure you scrub that face really, really good, around those ears. Doesn't hurt if you have a brush to brush that stuff in necessarily either. I've got some gloves that have some friction on them, so I'm kind of using that. But you could use like a vegetable brush on this as well, and it wouldn't hurt anything. Now you're gonna need a clean bucket of water. Lots of 5-gallon buckets are a good thing to have when you're tanning. Because now you need a clean bucket of water to rinse this in. So what I'll do is I'll take this water, I'll just dump it back over into the metal bucket for the moment. I don't like using metal buckets when I'm tanning, or metal pans. I like to use plastic. So we'll go get some fresh water in this. We'll clean that hide up. All right, now we got fresh water in our bucket. We're just gonna take this dude out, and we're gonna wring all the soap out of it that we can get out of it off to the side here real quick. Squeeze him and wring him really good. Then we'll get him down into fresh water and rinse everything out good. So I'll tell you that this is one of the most tedious things. This is a gray fox I'm working on, and his tail wasn't split open all the way. So I've got to go down here and I've got to split this out, and I'm going very, very carefully. I'd start clear up here. And the tail's got to be split all the way down or it's going to rot. All right. So, see that? stuff stripping off of there. That's what we got to get rid of. And this hide's cold, so it's going to be more difficult than it would be if this was a warm hide. You got to be careful where it doubles up on you like that, because that's how you rip holes in the hide. Sometimes it's easy, and sometimes it's hard. But I will tell you, it is much easier if the hide is warm, or if the hide is damp. The drier this hide is, and the colder it is, the harder it is to get this done. All right, guys, so listen, I'm trying to do some things kind of in series in this video series. And so some things kind of get jumbled up because I'm going back and forth on a couple different hides. What you need to understand with all of this stuff is I gave you the 5 steps that are important to hide tanning. Sometimes you can skip a step. Sometimes you need to back up a step. And sometimes you can do less than you might have to do as far as soak time and those types of things. But you're not going to learn that until you do it. And it's just like anything else. You know, you don't know what you can get away with as far as starting fire goes until you started 100 fires. And then you know, in a certain situation, with a certain material, with a certain resource available, with a certain ignition device, you might be able to get away with a lot more than you can get away with worse conditions, wet material, things like that. It's the same thing with hide tanning. There's things that you can get away with, and knowing when you can get away with them and how much you can get away with is important. So we'll just take this fox I'm working on right now in this segment of the video. It's a gray fox. We already have the red fox in the pickling solution. The gray fox was frozen and thawed, but it was never fleshed. So when I unfurled it onto the beam to start flushing it, I could already tell it was going to be a pain in the butt because everything was still hard and it's cold outside. So I can back up a step with that or jump forward a step really quick, throw it in the pickling solution, let it sit there for 8-10 hours till tomorrow morning, pull it out of that pickling solution, which is going to set the hair because I don't want the hair to slip. The longer it sits out in the air and it's not in some type of solution, the more chance there is of that hair to slip unless I'm letting it dry completely on a rack, in which case I couldn't flush it. So I need to get it wet again to be able to flush it easier. And to do that, I might as well jump to the pickling stage, pull it out, flush it, then see if it needs to be degreased because at that point it'll already be pickled. Would I do that on a fresh hide that I just pulled off a carcass? I absolutely would not because it'd be easy to flush, right? I wouldn't need to do that. I might even skip the pickling step if I had done that altogether and go straight to the tanning. I've done that many, many times. But understanding the important steps, understanding why you're doing certain things and what they do to the hide and why you either need to do it or don't need to do it for how long or how much, that's what you only learn from doing lots and lots of hides. You're not going to learn that by watching this video necessarily. You're definitely not going to learn it by watching 100 videos on YouTube. You're going to learn it by doing it yourself. So I would encourage everybody to jump out there, get a hide from somewhere, even if it's a rabbit hide or something like that, and start to practice these tanning processes yourself so that you understand how it works. Because we're going to jump around on some things during this series. We're going to talk about lots of different things within the videos. So if you say go from part 1 to part 3, you've missed a whole lot of stuff that you could have learned. So just be prepared to take notes because I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I'm going to come back and talk through why I did certain things so that you can make notes as well in your notebook or whatever for when you start tanning hides. All right, so one thing we should talk about today is this flushing beam, all right? This flushing beam is one of your most important tools. And yes, you can makeshift this thing out of a piece of PVC. You can strip the bark off of a log. But this thing really needs to be nice and smooth. And it's hard to find a log this long with no knots or anything in it that's perfectly clear to use, although you can. But if you buy a flushing beam, they're only about 40 bucks. Make sure that you take care of this thing. Now, if you didn't have enough oil or grease on the last animal that you got done with, which we didn't on that fox, we don't want this board to dry out. And that hide will absorb oils out of this board. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use some grapeseed oil on this. And, ooh, got a little overzealous there. And I'm going to wipe it down really, really well with that grapeseed oil, front and back, okay? I want that oil to soak into this board. I don't ever want this thing to get dry because I don't want it to splinter up and I don't want it to crack. And that's what's really important with this thing because it has to be as smooth as it can be so that we're not raking against something we shouldn't be when we're taking care of our hide, okay? So we want to keep this thing oiled up all the time. If you got a tune you're doing on this thing, it just came out of a trap, that dude's going to be so full of grease, you're not going to have to worry about it. You can just wipe it down the board or use some of it off the ground, whatever you need to do. But make sure that you keep this thing greased all the time. And after you use it, make sure that you grease it up really, really well. That includes the bottom of this board, just like the top of your axe handle, okay? You want to make sure that this thing is well maintained and taken care of. If you get one of these brand new, it probably won't have very much oil on it, and it may be a little dry, depending on where you buy it and how long it's been stored. First thing I would do is give that thing a good coat of lard or grapeseed oil to keep it in good shape.